Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's webinar. My name is Hannah. I'm a software specialist here at Strucsoft Solutions, part of the Great Tech Group. And we're very excited to bring you this week's webinar, which is entitled MWF LODs, Framing Out Your Revit Project. Automatically increase your project LOD for better coordination and collaboration within Revit and MWF. As you may know, MWF, which stands for Metal Wood Framer, which is an automated Revit-based framing solution dedicated to wood and light gauge steel framing for walls, floors, ceilings, and roofs. This is a great tool to enhance your LOD, which stands for level of detail. Today's presentation is mostly focused on our product MWF, but we will be going over some building information modeling LOD basics as well. Please note that what is mentioned here today is merely a recommendation and may vary project to project depending on your contract and BIM execution plan, which we will talk about later. So you may find resources on the internet that have slightly different details. So let's jump in. This is our cover page. We're going to talk about a few things first. So the first portion of the presentation is more informative, and then we will talk about technical specifics. The bullet points, first there's going to be an introduction. What is the level of detail? What are the different LODs in BIM? We're going to talk about an MWF LOD chart and how to achieve MWF LODs. LOIs, which is level of information, is a big topic. It's going to be a topic for another day, or a potential topic for another day. Please leave in your comments on any topics you would like us to cover in our webinars. And please don't hesitate to ask any questions during or after the webinar in the Q&A or the comment section. Let's talk about what we mean by level of details. So levels of details, which stands for levels of development or details, refer to a standardized framework for defining the amount of detail and accuracy that should be included in a building information model at different stages of a project. Levels of development or detail are tracked in projects through an LOD matrix. This is very important. It's an essential component of your BIM execution plan. So this will vary from one project to another, from one contract to another. There's also something very important to mention, the LOD matrix. So this is where teams define and outline LOD requirements for specific building elements and systems at various project stages. The above information is courtesy of Autodesk. To find out more, you can visit the Autodesk page and find out more about LODs or level of details. To start talking about MWF LODs, we're going to go over the LOD basics. So let's talk about LODs in BIM. There are 6 levels of development. So the American Institute of Architects, the AIA, and the Associated General Contractors of America, AGC, have established a commonly used LOD framework that breaks down the building model into specific levels. So these are the levels that we're going to talk about. Again, the above information is courtesy of Autodesk. Here is another external infographic or another reference that goes over the different LODs. In LOD 100, which is the conceptual design, the model is represented by shapes, basically, that show the approximate location, size, and orientation of the building without detailed geometry. For LOD 200, which is the schematic design, modeled elements have to have approximate relationships to quantities, size, shape, location, and orientation. With regards to LOD 300, which is the detailed drawings, modeled elements have accurate and detailed representations of building components and systems with precise quantities, sizes, shapes, locations, orientations, making it suitable for procurement and initial construction planning. LOD 400 is dedicated to fabrication, At this level, the model is data-rich, enabling precise fabrication, assembly, and installation of modeled elements. LOD 500 is dedicated to as-built or facility management. The model represents the final built form, including all elements as installed and constructed. It is suitable to be used for maintenance and operation of the facility. Let's zoom in here and talk about LOD 100, which is the conceptual design. So in the conceptual design, which is LOD 100, you can expect to have a model that looks like this. It's going to be a very simple model. At this stage, the model represents the basic shape and size of elements without detailed information. This is used to convey the overall design intent. MWF does not exist in the conceptual design. The next stage would be the schematic design. In LOD 200, the model becomes more refined, so there's more detail than before, incorporating approximate quantities, sizes, shapes, and locations of elements. It helps in analyzing spatial relationships and early design concepts. LOD 200 schematic design may be sufficient for early design stages, but most projects require a higher level of detail than this. So that's why LOD 300 is the minimum, usually, the minimum level of development that is needed for construction documents and coordination, and is needed for documentation, fabrication, and coordination between disciplines. Also, you'll notice that MWF still does not exist in LOD 200. Okay. Let's move on to LOD 300, which is the detailed design. Building elements are modeled with precise geometry in terms of quantity, size, shape, location, and orientation. Non-geometric information like materials, fire ratings, etc. can be attached to model elements as well. Coordination models usually start at this phase as well. So coordination is a very important part of this process. You'll notice we do have some MEP elements and structural elements there in this model as well. These models can be used for clash detection and provide comprehensive design details for construction. LOD 300 models can also be used for detailed cost estimations, scheduling, and construction planning. And this is why we recommend that you have MWF framing start at this point. This is very important to mention, but only for critical framing. If you like, you can have more detailed framing. I left the floor a little bit more detailed, but I changed the walls to only include critical framing, which is what we see over here. And the reason for this recommendation is that this is the coordination stage. It is a good idea to start with MWF framing in this stage over here. And this is because you're also going to be working with MEP. So it's very good to have a reference for your critical framing at this stage. And this is entirely depending on your BEP or BIM execution plan. Let's move on to LOD 350, which is the construction documentation. In this model, you'll notice that everything is starting to be more detailed, but it's still not fully detailed. This is the construction documentation phase. The model would include detailed assemblies and fabrication or construction level information. It's used for generating construction documents and later on shop drawings. So over here, you'll notice that there is more detail with regards to the vertical framing for the floor as well. And then we will talk about this a little bit more when we specifically talk about MWF. Let's move on over here, LOD 400, fabrication and assembly. So you'll notice right away that there's definitely more detail happening here. So in this phase, this is for fabrication and assembly. This level involves the creation of detailed models with specific assemblies and connections. So connections are a very important part of this LOD. So the model has to be suitable for fabrication and assembly purposes. Normally, there would be a subcontractor for the framing who would start at this point to create more detailed drawings. We will talk about this in more detail in a little bit. The LOD 500 model is basically as-built or facility management. This model at this stage includes information about the installed and operational elements of the building, reflecting real-world conditions for maintenance and facility management. So basically, in a perfect world, LOD 400 and 500 would be identical, but we all know that this is not a perfect world, and this is not the case because events can happen and changes can happen on site for various reasons. Also, too many to mention in this webinar, but reasons can include, for example, relocation of certain elements, change of specific details, different suppliers at certain points. So this means that we would have to update our model to make it resemble the as-built or what exists on site. Moving on to the MWF LOD chart, and here we're going to talk about MWF. Let's start with the LOD 300 or detailed design. So here, framing of critical wall support elements that cannot be easily cut for coordination of MEP are a good idea to start with at this point. You'll notice that we have just the outlines of the framing with regards to the floors, with regards to the walls, and with regards to our trusses. So they're not fully detailed. It's just the critical framing that is important at this stage. And again, it's because you're going to start to coordinate with other, for example, with MEP, for example. We're going to talk about how we would achieve this in MWF in the next portion. With regards to LOD 350 and MWF, you would have a result that looks a little bit like this. So cold form metal framing or wood framing is developed with sufficient elements at this point to support detailed coordination with other systems such as MEP. Infill vertical framing is modeled at this point for coordination with other building contents such as MEP. This also depends on your BIM execution plan. Cladding and sheathing can be shown at the stage. I didn't show them for now, but you could also show them, and this depends on your specific details in your contract. With regards to MWF and LOD 400, which is fabrication and assembly. So if I zoom in here, you'll notice there is definitely more development going on over here than what we had before in LOD 350. In this case, cold form metal framing is developed with sufficient elements that support the fabrication, and this is the important part of this LOD. Connection content is very important. So connection content is developed in the wall elements. This includes, but is not limited to, fasteners, clips, and other related hardware. Cladding and sheathing are also definitely shown in this stage. I've shown them for the floors. So if I tab here, you'll notice I did add them for the floors. I didn't add them for the walls, but this is only just for clarity of the framing bit, just because I wanted to focus more on the framing, but it would be added if this is something that you're using in your model. With regards to trusses, you would need to show the shape of the truss in LOD 350. And I do want to add, in LOD 350 and 400, but I do want to add that with regards to our trusses, nails and screws and anything related to the connections of trusses is available as information. So these would be documents that you would create using our truss module, and you would receive them as reports. So they would not be modeled, but you would have that information as reports. With regards to the as-built or facility management, changes would include, for example, let's say a relocation of an opening. We have a tool that can update your model. So if we go to the wall module and we select one member of the panel and regenerate, you could incorporate design changes by regenerating. You may also have to go to the panel properties and make changes to specific, let's say, for example, the hold down type has changed for whatever reason. You might have to make similar changes as well. So with regards to LOD 500, the model elements are field verified. They're a field verified representation in terms of size, shape, location, quantity, and orientation. There is also non-graphic information that may also be attached to the model elements as well. So now how do we achieve MWF LODs? So with regards to LOD 300, let's talk about some detailing over here. We're going to use this example to achieve all of the LODs that we just talked about. To achieve an LOD 300, what you could do is use the following. So let's go to the properties of this panel, or when you're creating the panel for the first time, you will get the properties menu, or you can click on properties if this is a panel you've already created. So for LOD 300, this might not be very detailed. It's okay if you're not using something exact or specific. If you go here to miscellaneous, and let me just move this up a little bit. If you go over here to where it says function and you click here on this drop down, you have the option to use framing only or framing passes. I'm going to use framing only. You can use framing passes as well, but if I click here on framing only, you'll notice that the menu here has changed. So it's showing you the tools that you can use if you're showing framing only. And here we're talking about critical framing. So you don't have the stud option. You can't specify the stud spacing. This is not really needed in this LOD. You can make changes to tracks, which is the upper and bottom. Opening framing can be defined at this point. So anything you see here can be added. Depending on your BEP, you may want to add kickers. You may want to add additional details for bearing, but that's pretty much it at this phase. So if you click on OK, this is the expected result. And this is all you would need for MEP or early MEP coordination, where you have your critical framing that is placed in critical areas such as openings, the starts and the ends, and the top and bottom of the panel. With regards to LOD 350, in this case, you would definitely need more detail than this, or at least this is what we recommend. So if you select any member of the panel or the wall itself and go back to properties, in this case, if you have your specific templates, you can use them from here. So you can click on template and you can use the specific template and assign it. Or if you're going to update or create your own templates at this point, you can go here or you can start here at this stage. This is not mandatory for the stage, but you could define the horizontal studs, verticals, bottom and top with more specific details. And if you move to miscellaneous, the function over here should be defined by either exterior or interior. And then you would have additional features. The important ones for this phase would be the stud spacing, where you can specify the stud spacing over here. I'm going to keep it as is and just click on OK. So for LOD 350, the vertical framing should be there so that you can coordinate better with MEP. So infill vertical framing would be modeled for coordination. Cladding and sheathing can be shown depending on your BEP as well. Then when we move on to fabrication and assembly, this is where you would need to add the full details. In this case, you may have your templates already created. So if you click on Properties, you can go to Template if you're updating your model, and you can assign a specific template and set it as active and click on OK. If you haven't created your templates already, let's talk about a few things that we can do to upgrade your template. So this is an example of an LOD 400 panel. I'm just going to click on Control Z on my end and go back here. In the case that you haven't created your templates, you would need to build them. So you would need to create a template for the desired panel for your LOD 400 result. We're going to cover a few basics. We're not going to be able to cover everything for today. We do encourage you to visit our YouTube channel for more videos on other topics. But let's go to Properties and start to make more changes to this panel to add additional detail. Let's start here with studs. Your spacing has to be defined. Also, I just want to add that the specific horizontals, verticals, bottom and top have to be defined as well in this stage. Additional details for the tracks, for opening framing would be very important in this stage as well. You can either specify here under openings for windows, doors, and openings what you would like to do here, but these are very simple options. If you wanted to use markers, you would have to use rules. You can either use rule sets or you can add condition maps. Let's add a few condition maps over here. On my end, I only have a window, so I can define a map that I want to use. So you would also have to define the opening framing. You can add furring. You can add extra studs or horizontals, tools such as bracing, K-braces, MMV braces. You do have to include splicing if needed. Lifting holes, you can also add foam, kickers, deflection connectors. Cutbacks have to be defined as well. Hole series would need to be added in this LOD. Anchors and hold downs will also need to be added. Fastener count is for nails, and I do want to add that this tool does not model nails. It will add nails as details, which means that you would specify the number of screws that you need to use for specific locations, for framing and for sheathing. This tool will not model nails and screws, but will show this information in your schedules. The reason why we don't model nails and screws in MWF is because it would make your model very, very heavy. Again, this is an important part in your BEP, BIM execution plan, to take into consideration. Let's just add some horizontals for now. So let's click on Edit, and then we can go over other tools later. Let's add horizontals from E1 at this point, and the endpoint is going to be end. We can add it at E2, and this is just an example of how you would start to detail your model. You would specify the justification. Where do you want to place it exactly? So you have to be as accurate as possible in this stage. In previous stages, this could be added, but without a lot of detail. The family has to be very specific, so you do have to specify exactly which family you would like to use. I'm going to use this one. If you need to split horizontals or need to add a stagger, these details are also very important. So the more detail you add, such as adding clips, will increase your level of detail as well. So let's add some clips. Let's set clip settings. You can add them from hard side to hard side, just like what we see over here. You have to specify the family as well. I'm going to add them for vertical studs and EVs, and I'm going to click on Add. I'm going to add them to the other side as well, just like we see over here, to the same members, and I'm going to click on Add again. So I've added them on one side and now on the other side, and here I'm starting to detail my panel with more and more detail. Another detail you can add is to punch holes. So I'm going to click a type. If you haven't created them already, you would have to create your whole configuration under panel properties. And here you would specify the number of horizontals you want to add. I'm just going to add one, and you would specify the offset, and here I'm just going to click on add, where MWF is going to add a random name, or I could have specified the naming myself. So let's hit close. Let's stop here, hit OK, and we'll talk about other details later. So in this LOD, we would specify the details more and more, and we would add clips, for example, and then if we're happy with this template that we've created, what we would do is go back to properties. We can add additional features from over here if we like, but what I'm going to do right now is go to template, and I'm going to save this in a specific location so that I can use this template over and over again. If you click on Manage Folders, you can create a folder. I'm just going to save it here in the default, and if I click on Save As, I would give this whatever name I like. So I would name this template in a specific name. So now I can use it over and over again. And this is how you would start to create your own template and use it over and over again, depending on the LOD that you need. Now let's talk about practical examples. Let's try something practical on a project. And we're going to upgrade the LOD of that project, and we'll go over a few more tools as well. Over here, we have a multi-level project that has been framed with MWF prior to this presentation. I'm going to zoom in here, and now we're going to talk about practical applications of what we were just discussing. So in a LOD 400 model, you would need to specify exactly what studs you are using. Over here, we're using a specific type, and in other floors, we're using other types. And this is another example of how your templates can be different. You can have different templates that include different types. Over here, we have an interior wall with a completely different size, and you can create a specific template for that interior wall. Other details include adding the horizontals that you need, for example, and very importantly, the opening details have to be clearly specified in this level of detail. So over here, you'll notice in this template, we're using a specific header type, and here in this other floor, we're using another header type. This opening detail over here is completely different, and this one here is also different. So it's very important to specify what you want to do with your openings. Let's go over a few more tools that we still didn't discuss. Details you can add include horizontals, furring, truss headers, and other headers, K-braces, braces, and etc. We need to add connections. I still haven't done that. Hold downs, whole series, and anchor bolts. Let's go over how we would achieve that really quick. Another command, a very popular command that will make your LOD a little bit higher as well, can be found over here in miscellaneous. These over here, whole series, anchors, and hold downs. I'm going to cover hold downs for now. Let's click here on edit and go over this tool that will add a very important detail in your project. The first thing you would need to do is enable hold downs. You can add them at the bottom and or at the top. You specify a placement pattern. You specify a whole series. If you haven't created whole series, if you click on manage, this is where you would create them. You can also create them through the panel properties as well. Here is where you specify a specific family. So you can get very, very detailed when it comes to hold downs. We actually have a very big library for this that is available out of the box. You can also use your own families as well. We have additional webinars on this topic. So if you choose to add anchors, this is adding even more detail. So you have the option to add a hole and you have the option to add an anchor or just to add a hold down. Again, this goes back to the topic of the flexibility of the software and your BIM execution plan as well. So this does depend on what your contract includes. You can add bottom anchors and or top anchors as well, and you specify according to the design where you want to place them. I'm going to stop here, click on OK, and click on OK again. And this is the end result. You'll notice that the hold downs were added, the anchor bolts were added, and also the whole series has been added as well. So this will add more detail to your model. To save this as a template, we would follow the same steps that we've done with before. We would select one member of the panel, go to Properties. This is a little repetitive, so you would click here on Template and you would save as. Now let's talk about some recommendations. If you're responsible for creating all LOD stages for your project, we do have some recommendations for best practice for your workflow. What we recommend is that you have a template map created. So I'm going to click here on template map. When you create a template map, actually I have created 3. I've entitled one of them as LOD 300. The second one is LOD 350, and the third one is LOD 400. You can switch between templates. And the good news is that you only have to create this one time, and then you can save this in your Revit template and use it over and over again, where you can choose between different LODs. So here what you would do is specify wall types with templates. So you would have to create Revit wall types. You would choose them or add them over here by clicking on the plus sign, selecting a specific wall type. Let's say we want to use this one, okay? And then you would assign a specific template for that wall type from over here. So when you click on this drop down, you would select a template that you've created with MWF. It could also be an out-of-the-box template. Let's pick something random. And this way you're telling the software that when it sees a specific wall type to use a specific template. If you don't need one, because I don't need this right now, you can also delete it. And like we said, you can create multiple of these. So you would select the one that you want to use, and you would hit OK. And I'm just going to show you a quick example of how we would use Quick Create. Let's create LOD 400 for these specific wall types. I have an exterior wall, I have an interior wall, and I have another interior wall with a specific size. What you can do is make a mass selection like this. And depending on your project stage, you would choose the template map that you're working with in this stage. So you highlight it in blue, you hit OK, and then you would use a very popular tool, which is called Quick Create. Quick Create is used in conjunction with the template map that we just saw. So then you would just click on Quick Create, and the software is going to start matching. It's going to match wall types with MWF templates, just like we told it to. And this is the end result. So in LOD 400. Whole series needs to be added. Tools such as K-bracing can be added as well. Clips, furring tools, anchors, and hold downs as well. The last thing that I wanted to talk to you about is another recommendation that we have. First of all, we do recommend that you not work directly on the architectural model. What we recommend is to use a very popular Collaborate tool where you attach or link the architectural model, and then you would frame a mirrored copy of the original file. So what you would do is use the linked project, which is the architectural project, and you would create your own hosted wall hosts, which are walls, floors, ceilings, and roofs, and then you would frame them according to the LOD of your choice. We have a very good webinar on this. I'm going to add it in the chat so that you can take a look after this webinar. So that's one thing. The other thing we recommend is that you save every LOD just by using basic file save as and archiving your project with every LOD. And we do recommend that you use a fresh version of your project for every LOD. This is just a recommendation. You may have other workflows. If you do, you can leave them in the comments and give us your thoughts or ideas so that we can discuss it in future webinars. That's it for today. This concludes this week's webinar. Please leave your questions or comments in the Q&A or comments section here. We hope you enjoyed our presentation and found it useful, and we will see you next time. Bye, everyone.